Hello everyone, tonight we're going to slip quietly into the fog-heavy morning of the Italian Alps in 1796, where you're trudging beside a young general who is still more rumor than legend. The snow stings your cheeks, your boots are soaked, and the only warmth is the nervous energy shared by thousands of hungry men climbing toward a place they've never seen. The world is cold, thin, and full of risk, and you probably won't survive this unless you learn to move with the rhythm of an army that is half frozen, half faithful, and entirely uncertain about what tomorrow will bring. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And while you're settling in, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is over there. Now, turn down the lights, turn on the fan to some soothing background music, and enjoy your evening ride together. You're lumbering up a mountain pass that feels less like a road and more like a punishment invented by someone who hated knees. The wind whips around the columns, turning every loose scrap of cloth into a tiny flag of surrender. The soldiers around you mutter about their rations, mostly because there are none, and one man keeps insisting he saw a ghost goat following the baggage train. That's your first light-hearted moment of the night. He claims the goat is judging him for eating the last of his bread. You try not to laugh, but honestly, it's a long march, and you'll take comedy wherever you can find it. Ahead of you is Napoleon Bonaparte, thin, pale, and walking much faster than anyone with good sense should. He's not riding today. He wants to feel the mountain under his feet, to let his soldiers see he's suffering the same cold, the same hunger. One historical fact that floats around the campfire whispers tonight is this. At this moment, Napoleon is only 26 years old. 26 and already planning to break apart one of the oldest empires in Europe. You smell pint, wet wool, and the vague promise of breakfast that almost certainly won't materialize. The sky above you brightens into a thin strip of gold, filtered through the cloud cover like a candle seen underwater. You're breathing hard, tiny clouds forming from your lips and trying to keep your mind off the fact that your toes stopped feeling like toes several hours ago. Still, there's purpose here. You can sense it in the way Napoleon studies the terrain. He pauses at a ridge, narrowing his eyes as if he can see the whole Italian peninsula unfolding like a giant chessboard. That's when you notice him scribbling something on a scrap of paper. Orders, sketches, a grocery list. You consider the possibility that he's doodling little maps for fun. Your second joke of the night, but you decide against asking him. He has the expression of someone solving a puzzle with pieces only he can see. Historians are still debating whether Napoleon already had the entire campaign mapped out in his head before leaving France, or whether he was improvising based on the terrain and the political chaos of northern Italy. From where you stand, it looks like a bit of both. Genius mixed with the sort of boldness that would make most commanders break into a cold sweat. The pass opens into a slope where snow thins enough for the mud to take over. Suddenly, your boots sink just a little too deep, and each step makes a noise like you're churning butter with your feet. A drummer nearby curses the weight of his instrument. You and the drummer share a moment of silent suffering that needs no words. Your third joke arrives naturally. He mutters that if he survives this, he will personally outlaw mountains. You tell him that sounds like a lovely election platform. By midday, the weather softens. The clouds tear open to reveal streaks of blue sky. It's not warm, exactly, but it's not hostile either. You can see the long line of French troops behind you, snaking through the narrow road like a river of faded blues and whites. This is the army of Italy, poorly supplied, but marching with a strange, stubborn energy because this strange little general has convinced them the future belongs to them. Napoleon stops near a rocky outcrop and waves you over. He wants you to look. Down below, beyond the last ridge, you see the shape of the plains lumbered a soft green and guarded by Austrian positions scattered like little ants on a blanket. It doesn't look impossible, just difficult, and difficult is something Napoleon seems to enjoy. He gestures across the valley and murmurs that controlling the passes will allow him to divide enemy forces before they unite. It's a simple idea, but delivered with such conviction that you almost believe dividing armies is as easy as slicing a loaf of bread. Assuming you still had any bread left, he explains, briefly, that speed will win the day, that the Austrians won't expect a starving army to strike so boldly. One unusual detail catches your attention. Napoleon taps the hilt of his sword, as if thinking through each maneuver. It's not a dramatic flourish, more like a metronome for his mind. Beat by beat, idea by idea. You wonder whether the sword is comfort or habit. Maybe both. As the army descends toward the lower ground, you feel the change in mood. Men begin talking again, cracking jokes about the Austrian uniforms, the food they'll demand from the next village, or how they plan to sleep for a week once the war ends. They're weary, but they're also waking up to something larger than themselves. You can sense it, the way soldiers do when history is shifting. Throughout the afternoon, Napoleon reorganizes the columns. Orders move like ripples across the ranks, carried by officers who half run to keep pace with the general's accelerating plan. You're caught up in the flow of it, noticing how careful he is with geography. Hills become shields, valleys become funnels, and every muddy curve of the road is an opportunity. You watch him gather a circle of officers beneath a gnarled pine tree. They're shivering, scribbling notes, nodding with a mixture of faith and fear. Napoleon speaks softly, but with the sort of assurance that makes even the iciest wind pause to listen. He outlines the next steps of the campaign, focusing on momentum. Don't give the Austrians time to breathe. Don't let them guess the direction of the blow. As evening creeps in, the army settles near a clearing. Fires spark to life, little orbs of orange floating in the cold air. Someone tells the ghost goat soldier to stand guard since he can spot supernatural livestock. Laughter rolls through the camp. You sit by the flames, warming your hands, watching the shadows flicker across Napoleon's gaunt features as he studies another map. The mountains tower behind you now, silent witnesses to the first steps of a campaign that will reshape Europe. You feel the fatigue, the uncertainty, but also the strange calm that comes before storms, real storms, and the ones made by men. You close your eyes for a moment, hearing distant drums, snapping firewood, and the soft hum of plans forming in the dark. You wake before sunrise to the sound of distant mule bells and the soft, irritated cursing of soldiers whose blankets have frozen to the ground. The fire has burned down to a charcoal glow and the world feels like it's holding its breath. Someone nudges you and mutters, "Welcome to Lombardy," as if introducing you to a grumpy relative. The air is warmer than the Alps, but only barely just enough to make your fingers sting as they thaw. You rise, stretch, and realize the army is already moving again, pouring down the last slopes like a river seeking the plains. Napoleon is ahead, riding this morning. His horse snorts clouds of steam into the dawn. He looks different now, sharper somehow, as though the mountains carved away whatever hesitation he carried. Down below, the Lombard plain spreads wide and green, patchworked with farms, villages, and winding roads. It looks peaceful, too peaceful for the kind of plans Napoleon has whispered to his officers. You can smell the wet earth, hear the first crows, feel the low hum of thousands of footsteps beginning another long day. As you descend further, you begin to see the truth of the situation. Nothing is ready for war. Not your supplies, not the local population, and not the mismatched units Napoleon inherited. The army of Italy has been neglected for months. One historical fact rings true the moment you reach flatter ground. Many of the soldiers haven't been paid in ages, and some have boots so worn they look like floppy pastries pretending to be footwear. That's your first joke of the night. A soldier tells you he's going to patent the croissant boot, and honestly, looking at the bent leather, he might be onto something. Villagers emerge cautiously as the army passes. Some wave hesitantly. Others pretend not to see you, which is fair. An army marching through your fields is rarely a good sign. But Napoleon has a plan for this too. He gently reminds local leaders that French revolutionaries come not as conquerors but as liberators, at least on paper. You watch him speak with a small council of elders outside a church. His voice stays calm, almost warm, but his eyes stay sharp, always calculating who might bend and who might resist. Your second unusual detail appears in this village. A child hands Napoleon a tiny bunch of violets, and instead of brushing past, he pockets them. Not dramatically, not to impress anyone, just quietly, as if he knows someday violets will be the flower associated with him. You wonder if he's sentimental or simply aware of the symbols people cling to during war. Historians are still debating whether Napoleon genuinely believed in his own early myth-making or whether he merely understood the psychology of people desperate for a hero. You follow the army onto a long, winding road cutting through bright green fields. The sun rises properly now, warming your back, lifting everyone's mood a bit. Officers ride up and down, issuing orders based on Napoleon's late-night sketches. The plan is simple in concept but absurdly hard in practice. Strike fast. Break through the Sardinian Piedmontese forces before they can unite with the Austrians. Then roll through Lombardy before anyone understands what's happening. To the east, hazy hills mark the direction of key Austrian positions. Smoke spirals rise from distant camps, teeny signals of the enemy waking up. You feel a tension along your spine. War is coming, and both sides know it. The road becomes a bottleneck near a narrow bridge. Wagons jam together, men groan under the weight of cannons, and the whole march slows to a crawl. The drummer from earlier is trying to keep morale up by tapping a cheerful rhythm. but the sound is more upset woodpecker than motivational anthem. Your second joke arrives when he claims he's inventing avant-garde beats that will be famous in 200 years. Through this messy crossing, Napoleon rides alongside the columns, checking the pace and repeating a phrase you've already heard: speed is everything. He's watching for hesitation, for units falling behind, for officers who don't understand that battles can be won or lost days before they're fought. You notice how he treats terrain like a living thing, sometimes friendly, sometimes hostile. A dip in the landscape becomes a hiding place for advance guards. A bend in the road becomes a shield for artillery. By mid-morning, the army reaches the outskirts of a small Lombard town. It's larger than the villages you passed earlier, with terracotta roofs and a market square bustling with uneasy traders. The French approach cautiously, but there's no resistance. Instead, trembling shopkeepers and tired farmers watch with guarded curiosity. You can smell baked bread in the air, actual bread, and for a moment, the soldiers behave like pilgrims walking toward a holy relic. Napoleon seizes the opportunity. He orders an organized requisition, emphasis on organized, no looting, no chaos. You watch officers negotiate for food, grain, and tools, recording everything carefully. It's strange to see war conducted like an enormous, stressful shopping trip, but the effect on morale is obvious. Fresh bread appears, cheese, even olives. Men cheer like children who found extra dessert. You take a bite of something warm and realize this may be the happiest moment the army will have for weeks. Napoleon spreads his maps across a stone well in the square. He studies every road, every hill, every patch of forest. You stand close enough to hear him murmur to an aide about forcing the enemy to split their forces. If the French move quickly enough, the Sardinians to the west will panic, and the Austrians to the east will misjudge the attack. He taps a finger against a crossroad, then another. You can practically see the dominoes lining up. Officers gather again. Orders fly. Units shift direction. Drums beat. The town watches in awe as the French army transforms from a ragged line of tired men into a coordinated spear point. Your third joke comes when a soldier tells you he's convinced Napoleon is secretly to people no single human could think this fast. He claims so. There must be a twin hiding somewhere handing out brilliant ideas. You assure him that if Napoleon had a twin, history would be twice as chaotic. By afternoon, the march resumes, heading deeper into Lombard. The land flattens even more, giving the army space to stretch. You feel the change in pace. Faster, sharper, purposeful. Clouds drift lazily across a blue sky. You catch glimpses of distant villas, orchards, vineyards, places untouched by the storm that's about to sweep through. As you walk, you overhear two officers debating strategy. One insists that the Piedmontese will make a stand at sea. The other claims they'll retreat toward Turin. Historians are still debating this uncertainty today: how much the Sardinians feared Napoleon, how much they misunderstood his speed, and how poorly the Austrians coordinated with them. From your perspective, the confusion seems almost helpful. Every wrong assumption the enemy makes is another step in Napoleon's favor. Evening approaches. The sun dips low, painting the fields gold. The air fills with insects and the low murmur of tired conversations. You loosen your pack, stretch your shoulders, and let the rhythm of marching settle into your bones. Supply wagons rattle behind you, newly filled. Soldiers joke about turning Italian farms into tourism spots once the war ends. Someone sings a badly improvised song about ghost goats becoming regimental mascots. You smile despite the exhaustion. Ahead, Napoleon is a small silhouette against the fading light, still moving, still planning, still shaping the campaign that will make his name echo across Europe. And you, trudging behind him, begin to understand this isn't just a march into Italy. It's the birth of something immense, something brilliant, dangerous, and wholly unpredictable. You barely sleep that night. The camp hums with the restless quiet that always comes before a battle, like the earth itself is waiting to exhale. When you open your eyes again, it's still dark, but you can already hear men stirring, boots scraping, metal clinking. Someone passes your tent mumbling that he dreamed of giant Austrian soldiers made entirely of cabbage. Your first joke of the night, and honestly, given the smell of the rations, you're not surprised his subconscious chose vegetables. You step outside into a world washed in cold blue starlight. Fires burn low. Officers huddle around lanterns, their shadows bending and stretching across the grass. Napoleon is awake too. Of course, he is standing at the edge of the camp with his coat wrapped tightly around him, staring at the horizon as though he can see the future crawling toward him, one infantry regiment at a time. The Battle of Montenotte will begin today. though no one calls it that yet. For now, it's just the attack. Napoleon's first major engagement of the Italian campaign, his first chance to prove to France, to the army, and maybe to himself that he can do more than march quickly and speak confidently. This is where the legend begins. Though legends have a funny way of growing out of extremely muddy mornings, the sky brightens to a faint gray as you move toward your position. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth, horses, and tension. You notice men adjusting their gear with hands that shake just a little. You feel the same tremor in your fingertips. War isn't something you ever get used to. No matter how softly the dawn breaks, Napoleon rides along the lines with a calm that feels almost unreal. He speaks quietly, his voice carrying just enough warmth to settle nerves, but just enough steel to remind everyone why they're here. One historical fact that becomes clear as you listen: Napoleon's greatest talent at this stage isn't victory, it's momentum. He uses speed not just as a tactic, but as a psychological weapon. The soldiers feel it, the officers feel it, and soon, the Austrians will feel it too. You march with the advance guard up a narrow road bordered by steep hills. Fog lies thick across the ground. Every tree looks like it could be hiding something unfriendly. A soldier beside you whispers that the fog is clearly an Austrian trick, and that if you inhale too much of it, you'll start speaking German. That's your second joke, and it breaks the tension long enough for you to chuckle before the reality of the climb sinks back in as you crest the first ridge. You finally see the terrain Napoleon has been obsessing over. The Austrians hold higher ground, stretched thin across several positions. The Sardinian forces are in disarray somewhere to the west, and you're placed in the perfect spot to witness one of Napoleon's earliest tactical signatures, the rapid concentration of force against a divided enemy. Historians are still debating whether Napoleon fully anticipated how poorly coordinated the Austrians and Sardinians would be, or whether he simply seized the opportunity as it unfolded. From where you're standing, it feels like a mixture of intuition and luck, but the kind of luck that seems to follow certain people like a loyal dog. Drums beat, orders shout, the French infantry moves into position. You can feel the ground tremble under the weight of it all, not from cannon fire yet, but from thousands of boots and thousands of beating hearts. Napoleon's tactic is clear: push aggressively at hit the Austrian left, and collapse the fragile link between their columns. A simple idea, delivered with precision. You watch officers scramble down slopes to relay commands, slipping on wet grass, shouting over the clatter of muskets being readied when the first volley finally cracks through the air. It's like the world shifts. Birds scatter from the trees. The fog dances with gunsmoke. The Austrian lines flare with sudden motion, men running, officers waving swords, flags whipping violently. The French advance, steady and purposeful. You move with them, ducking behind a low stone wall as bullets snap overhead like angry insects. The sound is sharper than you expect, like tearing cloth right next to your ear. Your breath comes fast. Your palms sweat despite the cold. This is no longer marching or planning. This is the part of history where your survival depends on not thinking too hard about anything. Napoleon appears on a rise behind you, observing the battle with a stillness that contrasts violently with the chaos below. He's directing artillery toward the Austrian flank, short, decisive gestures that send guns booming moments later. One cannon crew cheers when their shot smashes into a distant barricade, but their sergeant shushes them with theatrical severity. Your third joke comes when the sergeant turns and mutters, "If noise won battles, we'd all be promoted by now." You grin despite yourself. Humor feels like a rope anchoring you to sanity. Through the smoke, you notice something strange. The Austrian troops aren't falling back in unison. Their formations bend awkwardly, like mismatched parts of a machine trying to turn in different directions. It's an unusual detail, but one that gives Napoleon an opening. He sends reinforcements to the French left, hammering the weakened segment until the Austrian line starts to crumble. You surge forward with the next push, feet pounding the dirt, lungs burning, rifle clutched tightly. The world narrows to movement, your movement, and the enemy's shouts echo around you. Flags sway overhead. You hear officers urging the men on, some with confidence, some with desperation. The Austrian resistance breaks, not all at once, but in a rippling retreat that sweeps across the hillside. You see whitecoats disappearing into the smoke, stumbling back toward their secondary positions. The French cheer, a ragged, exhausted roar that fills the air like a tide. Napoleon wastes no time. He orders a pursuit not reckless, but relentless. Momentum, always momentum. You chase after retreating Austrians through brush and shallow ravines. The fog thins enough for sunlight to pierce through, casting long, golden spears across the battlefield. When the fighting finally slows, you collapse onto a patch of grass, chest heaving. Around you, soldiers share water, stories, and disbelief. Someone claims he saw Napoleon directing artillery with nothing but hand gestures, like a conductor leading an orchestra through a chaotic symphony. Another swears that the general teleported across the field because no horse could move that fast. Rumors blossom like wildflowers after rain. The truth, as always, is somewhere between myth and mud. You rise slowly, muscles shaking, and look across the hillside. The French flags now mark territory that belonged to the Austrians just hours ago. Napoleon stands with his officers, pointing toward the next ridge, already planning the next strike. The battle is over, but the campaign is just beginning. As the sun sets behind rolling Lombard hills, you walk back toward camp, boots heavy, body sore, mind buzzing. Around you, the army hums with a strange mixture of exhaustion and pride. They've won. You've won. And for the first time, you understand why history will remember this campaign, not just for victory, but for the way a young general convinced thousands of weary men that impossible things were simply things no one had tried yet. Morning arrives again, soft and hesitant, as if the sun itself is unsure what it's waking up to. You pull yourself from your makeshift bedding and hear the distant murmur of soldiers preparing for another march. Your body aches pleasantly from yesterday's engagement, the soreness a strange badge of honor. You tie your boots, adjust your coat, and step into the cold dawn. The air carries the scent of wet grass and burnt wood, mixed with the faint tank of gunpowder lingering from Someone nearby jokes about the battlefield aroma being new French cologne, your first smile of the day. Despite the exhaustion, Napoleon rides slightly ahead, scanning the valleys like an artist examining a blank canvas before adding strokes of brilliance. His horse stomps rhythmically, and you notice how easily he reads terrain, not as obstacles but as instruments. Hills, streams, forests, they all have a voice under his command. You realize this is the part where the Italian campaign truly transforms from march to masterpiece. The French army begins weaving through the mosaic of Lombardy, turning geography into strategy. Your first historical fact of the day. After Napoleon's plan is to isolate the Austrian forces from their Sardinian allies, striking quickly and decisively before they can regroup. Every step, every order, every misdirection is a calculated move, a living chessboard. You watch as columns of infantry fan out, artillery follows, and cavalry threads between villages, all moving with a cohesion that belies the army's ragged condition only days earlier. The first unusual detail reveals itself in a vineyard. Amid the rows of grapevines, a peasant woman offers a basket of figs to a passing officer. Napoleon nods politely, takes one, and slips it into his pocket. It is both practical and symbolic, feeding the army while maintaining order. Winning hearts quietly before the cannonballs speak. You quietly chuckle, your second joke, imagining the general later lecturing a battalion on fig distribution protocols as part of military discipline. As you progress, rumors swirl among the troops. Some insist the Austrians are hiding in nearby forests, others that reinforcements march from Turin. Historians are still debating whether Napoleon accurately gauged enemy strength or simply exploited their slow coordination. You realize that in war, uncertainty is often more powerful than certainty. It forces both sides to react, sometimes clumsily, to human decisions that ripple unpredictably. The march tightens as you approach the Battle of Lodi. Crossing the Ada River requires nerve and precision. The bridge is narrow, the waters churn below, and Austrian cannon smoke curls lazily into the morning sky. Your heart hammers. Napoleon rides alongside, observing the chaos with a calm that seems almost supernatural. One historical fact is clear. This bridge crossing is one of the most famous moments of the campaign, not just for its tactical significance, but for the morale boost it gives the French troops. Your third joke lands as a soldier whispers that the bridge feels like a catwalk for cannonballs. Another man grumbles that if he survives, he's opening a travel blog called Touring Italy while shot at. Laughter bubbles through the ranks, and for a fleeting moment, you forget the danger and smell only the crisp river air and warm horses. Napoleon's orders are precise. Artillery positions are selected with an almost obsessive attention to detail. Infantry columns move in careful arcs, using the rising ground for cover. Cavalry waits in reserve, a silent promise of devastating charge. You notice how he combines caution with audacity, a paradox that defines his early career. An unusual detail catches your eye. He seems almost playful, as if the battlefield is a canvas and every maneuver a brushstroke. The first shots ring out, Cannon fire hammers the narrow bridge. The Austrian forces, confident in their elevated positions, are initially unmoved, but the French press forward, step by calculated step, morale swelling behind every leader's shout. You join in, feeling the rhythm of movement as both a participant and observer. The battle becomes a study in human psychology, strategy, and timing. Momentum is now more than a concept, it is a weapon. As the French finally reach the far side of the bridge, you glimpse the exhaustion on the Austrian faces. Some retreat, some hesitate, unsure of the next move. Napoleon rides to the front briefly, and you notice an unusual detail, a small scarf tied around his wrist. It belonged to a supporter who whispered encouragement the night before, a reminder that even in the midst of strategy and smoke, human gestures matter. By the afternoon, the Austrian resistance collapses in scattered retreats, leaving the Ada River crossing firmly in French hands. You walk alongside your comrades, bodies aching, clothes damp, but spirits high. Napoleon gathers his officers and begins planning the pursuit. You overhear debates, which road to take next, how to intercept fleeing forces, how to balance speed with caution. Historians still debate whether the pursuit maximized strategic advantage or merely extended the French exposure to counterattacks. You, however, sense that in the mind of Napoleon, every step is a lesson in decision-making under uncertainty. As evening falls, you camp near a quiet village, fires flickering, men murmuring, and the faint laughter of exhausted soldiers filling the air. Someone sketches a map in the dirt, joking that if Napoleon sees it, he'll demand a correction in gold ink. You grin, imagining the general's obsession with precision. Small details matter more than you'd think. You lie back, listening to the quiet hum of conversation, the wind rustling, the faint clatter of distant animals, and you feel the rhythm of the campaign settling into your bones. Your thoughts wander to the mountains behind you, now silhouetted in twilight. The campaign stretches ahead, filled with unknown battles, clever maneuvers, and moments of both brilliance and danger. Yet, even in uncertainty, there's a strange comfort, the pace of history itself, marching relentlessly forward, carrying you along. Dawn creeps in again, soft and gold, spilling light across the Lombard plains. You wake with a sense of anticipation, the kind that makes your stomach flutter even though you've already marched for days. The camp is alive with quiet preparation. Soldiers check muskets, polish buttons, and fidget nervously with the straps of their packs. Someone nearby mutters that they dreamed the cannons grew legs overnight. Your first laugh of the day, a small comfort against the tension. You tie your boots, adjust your coat, and step into the cool morning, feeling the faint chill of air moving across open fields. Napoleon rides ahead, surveying the flat lands with the same intensity he showed in the mountains. He's calm, but there's a fire behind his eyes that tells you he's already calculating dozens of possibilities in a single breath. Today, you are approaching the campaign's pivotal moments, battles that will define his reputation and reshape the map of northern Italy. You notice something unusual, the way he gestures toward a distant hilltop, speaking to officers almost as if the wind itself is a messenger. It's subtle, almost mystical, and yet you understand that every movement carries strategic weight. The army marches steadily toward the enemy's entrenched positions near river. The terrain changes: gentle slopes, sparse woods, and narrow paths flanked by vineyards. The scent of tilled earth mixes with the faint aroma of breakfast fires from distant villages. You take a deep breath, noticing the sensory richness of a landscape that is simultaneously beautiful and deadly. Your first joke surfaces as a soldier complains that the vineyards are too orderly for his taste. He prefers chaos with his wine. You smile, thinking that perhaps every battlefield needs a critic. Napoleon's genius is evident in the deployment of troops. He concentrates forces at decisive points, exploiting gaps in the enemy line. You witness artillery carefully positioned on rises, infantry columns fanning out to encircle, and cavalry ready to strike at just the right moment. One historical fact stands out. The Battle of Rivoli demonstrates his understanding of speed, terrain, and enemy psychology, a template for campaigns to come. Historians are still debating whether his maneuvers were sheer brilliance, extraordinary luck, or a combination of both. Standing here, it feels like pure strategy made tangible. The Austrians attempt to reinforce weak points, but Napoleon anticipates their movements. You move with the French lines, feeling the pulse of men and horses synchronized with the rhythm of command. Smoke curls from distant cannons, dust rises from marching feet, and the air vibrates with tension. An unusual detail catches your eye. A young drummer boy, no older than 13, keeps pace with the infantry, striking beats that somehow steady nerves while echoing through the valley like tiny echoes of triumph. Your second joke is thinking that, if the boy grows up, he'll claim he invented battlefield jazz. The engagement intensifies. The French press forward, turning enemy positions into temporary chaos. Shouts, the clatter of musket fire, and the whinny of horses fill the air, yet the operation maintains a disciplined flow. You notice Napoleon riding along the front, not recklessly, but in a way that inspires confidence. Small gestures, a pointing finger, a whisper to an officer cascade into orders that ripple across the army. Momentum is weaponized. Hesitation is exploited. By midday, the Austrian forces begin to break. Columns that once seemed unshakable ripple and fold under the concentrated French attack. You move through the advancing troops, feeling the exhilaration of witnessing strategy materialize. Soldiers cheer, officers shout, and somewhere along the line, a man jokes that Napoleon must have a crystal ball hidden in his coat. You laugh, even as sweat and dust mix on your skin. The pursuit continues. Napoleon's audacity ensures that retreating forces do not regroup. You watch as villages once thought secure now lie under French control. Each success, both tactical and symbolic. The unusual detail of civilian interaction surfaces again. A widow offers a basket of eggs, and Napoleon nods in gratitude, acknowledging the human element even amidst war. It reminds you that battles are not only about maps and orders but also about people, choices, and subtle gestures. As evening falls, the army camps near a quiet valley. Fires flicker, soldiers murmur stories, and the smell of cooked bread mingles with campfire smoke. Napoleon studies a map with officers already plotting further moves. Historians are still debating whether the campaign could have been even more decisive. But what's undeniable is the precedent set, rapid, decisive action combined with psychological insight. You sit back, observing the rhythm of tired men, warm fires, and the gentle lull of the night. Your thoughts drift to the sacrifices made along the way, the exhaustion, hunger, and danger faced by every soldier who marched alongside the young general. Yet there is triumph here, too, the reshaping of northern Italy, the establishment of Napoleon's reputation, and the subtle, personal victories of human will and ingenuity. Your third joke comes as a soldier claims he saw Napoleon leap across a hill with nothing but his coat. You shake your head, smiling at the absurdity of myth in the making. Finally, you settle down near the fire. The stars emerge faintly overhead, the air cooling. You feel the campaign's rhythm slowing, the tension softening. The soldiers sleep or whisper quietly. The horses munch contentedly. The world outside is calm, yet you know tomorrow the march will continue. You close your eyes, listening to the whisper of wind through the trees and the low murmur of voices. The Italian campaign, in all its brilliance, audacity, and human drama, has carved its mark on history, and you have lived its first chapters. You drift into sleep with the images of mountains, rivers, vineyards, and strategy dancing gently through your mind, the echoes of momentum and courage fading into a soft lullaby.